Welcome. So our video today, we're very lucky to have Dr. Jamie Graves, who is the VP of Security Analytics at Fortinet and Napier alumni. Hi, Jamie.
All right. Hi, Bill. How you doing?
Hey, Jamie.
I'm good. How's yourself?
Yeah, doing good. It's another sunny day on lockdown, so the usual.
So, firstly, can we just ask you to talk us through how you got to where you are now?
Yeah, absolutely. So, as you say, I studied at Napier University, did my undergraduate degree there. I wasn't planning on doing an undergraduate degree. My plan was to go to art school, but I'm terrible at art, so I never did that. And I decided that, you know what, it's probably a good idea to get a degree after much talking with influential people in my life. So I did my undergraduate there. I did distributed systems and networks with Bill. I did my honours degree with him, and I believe the honours project focused on detecting malware going through firewalls. So trying to see if we could pick up traces of malware using snort rules and trying to shut down the firewall quickly. It was all inspired by the autoimmune system in the body, seeing if we could replicate something like that. Then once we did that, I was offered a PhD. So the subject of the PhD was basically, we had loads of people, we still do have loads of people, getting accused of all kinds of computer-related incidents. And a lot of the time, there's not the requisite sort of data to back up the accusations. And so really, the project was about forensics. It was about trying to understand the kind of forensically sound information, so complete, accurate, authentic data that could be used in order to prove that someone did or did not do something. So inculpatory and exculpatory evidence. And all the while, we wanted to make sure it was privacy preserving as well. So making sure that we weren't doing really intrusive kind of monitoring of computer sessions. And that led to basically me and Bill sitting down and going, what we've got here is actually pretty neat. And we applied for a POC grant. I think, I don't know if they're still around or if they've changed name, but basically it was a pot of money that Scottish Enterprise would grant you. So you had to go through a tender process, you had to go through a competing process in order to land the grant. And that basically led to us building a mini team within the university. So we built a board, an advisory board. We built a development team and started doing some commercialization, some pre-commercialization stuff, I should say. And that was successful. We got to 2010. And then 2010, we got Friends, Fools and Family to invest, a couple more grants. And we launched what was Inquisitive Systems, was the company name. And the product was called Guard Inc. And we later branded to ZoneFox. Then we raised more money, got more customers on board, and then 2018 we were acquired by Fortinet, and that's how I got here today. Dead simple.
Excellent. That's so it's really good for our students to hear that from university you can end up in a great position like yourself.
Yeah.
Having done all these different things. So if we can go back in time. Can we ask, what was your first exposure to computers you can remember?
So first computer was a ZX Spectrum with a dead flesh keyboard, and it loaded, we had the Ghostbusters game, which I remember looking a lot better than it actually does. I saw videos of it again the other day and I thought, that's not actually as good as I remember it. Maybe it's my childhood imagination. And the other thing I remember is loading it on tape, and all the noises, which I think influenced my later taste in dance music. So it was that, and then we had an Amstrad CPC 6128, I think it was. There's the long keyboard. It had like the 3.5-inch floppy at the end, and the game I remember from that was Elite, and also I saw my first spreadsheet application on it. And then my dad, he got a 286 for work, and he worked from home. So basically, that was us from that point onwards. 286s, 386, 486, all that kind of good stuff. All the different generations of Intel sort of architecture chips forward. So yeah, I've been around computers my entire life. I've been lucky to be able to have that opportunity.
That's great. Do you remember programming languages? What sort of programming languages did you start on?
Yeah, so this will probably cause a big debate and a bit of a holy war about whether this is a programming language or not, but it was HTML. So that was my first experience of getting something to work on a computer that I'd programmed or typed in order to get working. Because basically I was interested in how the web works. I wanted to build websites. And then from there you get sort of further in because you've got to do PHP, bit of Perl, bit of SQL, make things work. And then they're kind of like the gateway drug languages. And then you have to start doing more and more. Well, you don't have to, but you get more interested in it. So then it was C++, C, Java. I got introduced to those languages at university, and just from there onwards, I think it was mostly C# I used for my research. I think I built my honors project in PHP and Perl and SQL and so on and so forth. So basically, yeah, it was that kind of thin end of the wedge of HTML all the way through to various other languages. And nowadays, it's things like Python. I'm mostly using Python because I'm mostly doing data manipulation when I get the chance to do that.
Is that the type of thing you would possibly suggest to students? Something like scripting, flat scripting languages?
Yeah, exactly, something like that. And there's great libraries for manipulating data and doing all kinds of machine learning with it and all that kind of good stuff. So yeah, highly recommend that.
Sounds like you managed to avoid COBOL, so that's the main thing.
Yeah, which I'm upset about because I think you can get paid really well for doing COBOL nowadays.
Yeah, I did COBOL for a while in industry. Yeah, it's quite tempting, some of the offers that are sent around at the moment. So if we could get you to go into the security product developed at ZoneFox just a little bit more, just what kind of product was it, and how it kind of differed from the products that are around.
Sure. So as I said in the intro bit, it was very much around making sure we could provide details around what someone had been up to on a computer network, but without compromising their privacy. And when we span the product out, I think it's pretty safe to say it was a technology looking for a solution. So, they say when you go through all the entrepreneur classes and all that kind of good stuff, that you should really go out and solve a business problem, find out what the customer wants, and then say, right, I'll invent a technology and we'll put a service together to help you. But we kind of did it the wrong way around, which is fine. We got there in the end, where we had a technology that we thought could be really beneficial. But it took us a long time to discover that need within the customers. So one of our very first customers was a local Edinburgh company. They were a startup themselves, and we did a lot of work together to try and discover what their pain points were, and that helped us start to evolve the product into basically the classification that it finally got by industry analysts. It finally ended up in I guess what you call in the industry user entity behavior analytics, or UEBA, which is simply about trying to understand the behavior of users and devices within your network. And fast forward to today with COVID, homework, data all over the place, that it's very, very applicable in terms of where we can use it from a modern perspective. But it took a really long time. It was difficult because we'd spent the past 20, 30 years building perimeters around our networks of firewalls, the whole kind of defense in depth model, looking for malware, looking for these sort of technical threats. And so then going along to a company and explaining how people might accidentally leak data, or people might pretend to be someone from your organization and steal data from you, was a really tough job, because we were kind of breaking the normal rules of looking at just network traffic or just looking for malware. So it took a long time to do that kind of education piece, but we're getting there. I wouldn't say that it's been completely solved. I think there's still massive challenges in the industry, which I'm sure we'll talk about in a bit.
Yeah, and you incorporated some AI, machine learning into the product, into the
Yeah,
solution.
yeah, absolutely. So it was a product that used a certain type of telemetry or data that we'd invented during my research, and then we basically stream it from the laptop to center servers. At the moment, that's predominantly in the cloud. We use AWS a lot, and we basically do two things with that data. We check the data against rule sets or signatures that have been built out of compliance policies. So there's very much a compliance angle for the product, helping people understand whether they're maintaining their compliance. And the second is spotting behaviors. So as you say, using machine learning in order to train models to try and detect anomalies across user behavior.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Sound like you actually do use machine learning in your product rather than just use it as a marketing tool, which seemed to be quite quite prominent for a while.
Yeah, well, we've got buzzword bingo. We've got machine learning. We've got big data. We've got the cloud. It's all in there. We just need blockchain next. So
I think I know a man who could help you there.
I think so. Some dark blockchain would be good.
Blockchain, that sounds good.
So, if we could ask, how do you think, we could better bring kind of real life problems from industry, closer to our academic research?
Yeah. This is an interesting one because I think things are changing in the industry. I think that we've seen over the past couple of decades big innovations come on, big bang products like firewalls and antivirus, and now endpoint detection response and UEBA and cloud technologies and all that kind of good stuff. I think we're getting to a point where we are looking at incremental change. I think the big innovations are behind us in many respects. Until we have a new platform or a new computing paradigm, we're going to incrementally improve on what we have right now. So we've got enough data, we've got a lot of really good analytics techniques. And a lot of the things I see people in the market asking about is basically help to do the right thing and analyze their data in the right way. So I think a lot of the concerns out there are, I know I need to be secure, but I can't afford it. I can't afford the people to go with it. How do I know the services are good? How do I train people properly? How do I know I'm doing the right thing? So it's kind of a lot of the soft stuff that we still haven't addressed yet in the market. I think these are some of the questions that you might want to start asking business, because certainly I still do it. I still ask about technical things. I still ask about the kind of techie threats, but threats I think are not evolving as much as they have been. So it's been a while since we've had anything incredibly new come along. So it's the same old story in terms of it's a ransomware or the way in which we get into networks is either through 0 days or things that just haven't been patched. So all that kind of baseline basic stuff that we go on about all the time. But it's, there are solutions to those problems and we can fix those things, but how do people access the talent and the capabilities in order to get that done, I think is very much an unanswered area.
Interesting. So I think that leads us nicely on to what I want to ask about next. So if there's one thing you could fix, relating to cybersecurity, what might that be?
Yeah, I've got two, and I don't know which one I should talk about. So one of them is train software engineers in security practices. I still don't think we're doing enough of that. I think things are changing. So companies themselves have got great programs to push their software engineers through. And I know that Napier's done a lot of that as well in order to try and improve the security awareness. But we've still got this mentality of move fast and break things when it comes to developing products, and security is always seen as an afterthought. But part of that process of building your MVP, your minimum viable product, should be the security consideration, especially if it's something like a Facebook or a Twitter or some sort of platform where personal details are being divulged. And I guess the second one is helping people get the basics right. There are a lot of basics that can be done in order to help people. It's not necessarily about deploying the latest tool, but there's a journey we can all go on in order to achieve that security maturity. And a lot of people find it really hard to know where to begin. So more services, more capability around that particular area would be certainly of interest to myself.
That's great. So for our students, our current kind of students maybe at university or starting to look for jobs, can you give us an idea of some of the interesting roles or interesting things they might get involved at with Fortinet in Edinburgh or beyond?
Yeah, sure. So within Edinburgh, we've got lots of different skill sets. So within the office, we still have some of our marketing team. So we had a very broad set of skills that Zone folks still do. So still got some marketing function there. On the technical team itself, we've got our DevOps team. So the individuals who make things happen for our engineers and keep things running smoothly for our customers. We've got our AI team, so AI engineers, so data scientists, mathematicians, software engineers, really talented people who basically build the next set of incredibly helpful features for our users. And specifically the philosophy we've taken is machine learning is there to help augment people. So it's not there to replace humans, it's there to help them become superhuman. So that's a really interesting part of the business. We've got our internal security team. So we use a lot of the cloud. So we've got a cloud security specialist. I'm working with him, someone else who helps with those security requirements, both in terms of training developers, making sure that they're running interesting events to help our engineering team understand how to secure things. And then we've got our infrastructure and sort of big data engineering team as well. So they build the components that allow us to ingest billions of events and build the alerts and the background data technology to store and access this data.
Great. So again, for our students, looking to get into cybersecurity, what sort of advice might you give them?
Yeah, I think that it's a tough one because there's always that set of questions around how do I get experience to get my first job, which always asks for 2 years of experience. I think that going on work placement while you're at uni can be incredibly helpful. Contributing to an open project can be really useful as well. And there's community work as well, volunteering for maybe a services company that will help people in order to do that. It's about your studies, but it's also about a lot of the things you can do in your spare time as well, in order to build that sort of capability and background to show that you have the start of experience, or even if it's not experience, then it's the willingness to go out there and really apply yourself to get things done.
That's great. Yep. Yeah. I mean, we have a lot of good stuff in Edinburgh. I think we're quite lucky with our community, both internal student community and external community. Which you're a part of, as well as many others. So I think we're lucky in that sense, and students can get a lot from that. So going back to research and industry linkage, if students were looking for a focus, to look at research during their degree, undergrad or postgrad, and thinking towards like maybe doing their dissertation, what topics do you see as being, good topics for them to be thinking about, maybe, for the next few years to come?
So obviously there's a number of interesting technical areas, but I think you're probably in a fairly saturated area there in terms of everyone's interested in finding a 0-day or reversing something to find something interesting. And that's great. That's really interesting. But there's a lot of human aspects, a lot of the human factors of security that still need to be understood and researched. So going back to some of the things I was saying about helping companies understand where to start on their journey, thinking about not just the technical aspects, but how you can get people interested, involved, educated in security, because that's very much a cultural thing, and it's quite a difficult thing to impose on an organization. You as a security team can't say, all right, this is the way we're doing things now. But you need to understand the business processes, how they've evolved with the company. You can't just say, right, that platform you were using, we're throwing that out the window because we're using this entirely new thing. So I think there should be, at least from my perspective, a lot more interest, a lot more research in those particular areas when it comes to the human dynamics of security. Because while we've not got entirely the perfect set of tools, we've got a lot of them working really, really well to a high degree and high standard. And it's really that next phase that I think we need to do a lot more work on.
That's interesting. There's a sort of, there's a kind of gap or new topics. So you've done a lot over the last few years, since you've finished with uni. You've travelled a lot, but you're still settled in Edinburgh. Can you give us an idea of some of your kind of favourite or, interesting things that you like about being in Edinburgh?
What other than going to cloisters, you mean, Rich?
Cloisters is good.
No, I'd completely agree. So I'm not going to say Edinburgh pubs, but I'm going to say Edinburgh pubs are fantastic. I think, I'm looking out my window today. You've got the Windows XP in the background, but it does actually look like that out my window. It's nice, sunny, only a couple of clouds in the sky. It's beautiful. It's green. I can see. So I grew up in Balerno. And that was, you got up to the hills immediately. I've got to now cycle a wee bit longer to get to the hills, but you know what it's like. You can go mountain biking in the morning, in the afternoon, you can go around the shops, have a great meal, see a band. And then the people here are phenomenal as well. It's people from all over the world. And just I think it's Edinburgh, it's Scotland. It's just that a lot of the mentality I see here is really quite inspiring. It's just feels like a good place to live.
I agree wholeheartedly. Yeah, although you can't get a bike for love nor money during lockdown. Everything's I actually went to buy a new bike. Everything's sold out.
Really?
Oh,
is it like baking flour? I couldn't find bread flour for no amount of cash. It's unbelievable.
Yeah. It's I was a little bit shocked, let's say.
Everyone's off cycling all of a sudden.
It's good though. It's good.
Yeah, definitely.
So at this point, I'm going to hand over to Bill. Bill has some questions from his point of view.
Yeah, so Jamie, you're fairly unique. You took an idea and you achieved your vision and you saw it through. It's very unusual for somebody to start with that idea and then to grow a company and to move from that technical role to be the CEO. And you almost like take 9 or 10 years and say, yeah, it all happened in there. You talk about your PhD work, but that whole 9 years must have been a slog, an amazing experience, a terrible experience. What's your thoughts looking back at it now about that journey?
Yeah, you're right. It was an amazing and terrible and average and exciting and boring and it was all the opposites. It was very much the roller coaster ride that people describe. I think that if I'd done, there's loads of things I would have done differently, but there's not a bit of a regret, if that makes sense. It all happened for a reason. It all went in a way that it needed to go. I think that it is everything people talk about in terms of starting your own business and trying to push it and get it up and running.
Yeah, that's good. And I think one thing that many startups could learn about Zone Fox was the whole branding, marketing. When you went to conferences, Zone Fox just looked to be the best company there. What was your thoughts about, because you moved from Inquisitive Systems and that was one name, and then you got the Zone Fox, and then you almost like stuck to the Zone Fox brand and the color, and everything was just right about it. It just didn't feel like a small Edinburgh-based company. This felt like a real contender. What was your thoughts about evolving the brand?
Yeah, so the first product name was Guardink, Guardinq, and it was a play on inquisitive systems and the fact that what we were doing was a form of evidence that was indelible, and it was too clever. No one could pronounce or spell it, which apparently is a bad thing in business. So don't do that.
Yeah,
if your product's hard to pronounce, that's not a good idea. And basically, we got to a point where we thought we just need to change this because it's just ridiculous. And no one could spell inquisitive either, and neither could I. I still can't after 10 years of trying to type inquisitive into the laptop. So it was just a case of basically doing, I guess, the classic tech thing, which is you've got your two words smushed into one, and you choose a brand identity and off you go. And one of the things I really wanted to do was try and make ourselves look a lot bigger, as you say, look a lot bigger than we really were. And that was all about having a professional logo and name and brand and identity, differentiating ourselves. So all the products in the market were shields or gates or locks and all that kind of good stuff. And I wanted to make sure we didn't follow that. So try and make ourselves as distinctive as possible. And the logo that the agency came up with for us was phenomenal. It's really, really good. The same with the name as well. You know, we all went through this creative process in order to figure out what that brand name would be. And it just all clicked. You know, sometimes it's science, it's art, it's a bit of magic dust, and it just came together.
And along the way, that you must have had hurdles that you had to go over, where your innovation just didn't go anywhere, where there was barriers. What do you think was your biggest barrier? And obviously, funding is a major thing for a small company. But when you hit those barriers, how did you overcome those problems?
Yeah, I think the biggest barrier was getting people to try it out and give us feedback. We had beta testers, but they wouldn't put it on the network. What we were doing was very much, it was trying to get them to install a kernel driver across their production system. A little bit nervous about that. So we had to do a lot of work convincing them it wouldn't blow things up. So that was tough. I think in general, whether it's us or whether it's other startups, sometimes there's a real risk aversion to trying out products. And it's interesting to see some of the differences between here. So, you know, a lot of our first customers were startups or young businesses themselves, companies that had started from very little, had that entrepreneurial kind of outlook. And so it was easier in a way for us to go and speak with them about the challenges and the risks that they face, that they had to mitigate, I should say. And you know, you compare them against, say, the financial services sector, who are incredibly risk averse, and quite rightly so. You know, they've got an awful lot to do. They've got an awful lot of risk mitigation to be involved with. And being in Scotland, we have a relatively smaller set of entrepreneurial companies that are able to be approached. That's starting to change now, which is good. But if you look at other parts of the world where you've got these big innovation ecosystems, you know, you can go off to your mate's company to sell them a bunch of your first version of your product, or just get them to install it. And so, you know, we need that critical mass to allow people to go out and have that network of people who will just say, yeah, stick it on that server, or yeah, we'll try that because that sounds interesting. And you may have a high turnover, you know, big churn, because you may not have got the product right, but at least you're getting that feedback in. So it's that loop around getting people to try it, getting feedback in. It was really tough at first, and that built up over the time. But I think that came from a place of, as I say, technology looking for a solution. So going through that market fit kind of phase, and then finally getting people using it and that feedback coming in was immensely rewarding. And it was mostly just stubbornness. Was how we got over it. It was just going out and speaking to loads of people. You know, you just gotta burn a lot of shoe leather and shake a lot of hands. Although I don't know if we're allowed to shake hands anymore. Maybe elbow bump each other or something like that.
So you grew your company in Scotland. It's a small nation, and obviously it's quite difficult to sell into a international market, and it doesn't have maybe the same base as you would have in, say, in Berlin and London. So what's the good things about being based in Scotland, and what do you think are the things that you would fix about our environment?
Good things, people. We've got phenomenal universities. We've got incredibly world-class talent here from an engineering perspective, and sales and marketing too. So, you know, we've got the right people to do the things. We are a little isolated and remote in the grand scheme of things in some respects, which is weird in the, you know, we've got this big interconnected world, but face-to-face still matters. I'd be interested to see if that's the case nowadays with COVID going on, where Zoom is maybe not so much of a barrier to people making things happen as it once was. And of course, money as well. So having an equity environment that would allow more smaller companies, you know, having that spread of smaller bets in order to have more companies come through, because it's about quality and quantity as well. And the quantity allows you to try lots and lots of different companies. Not all of them will succeed, but you have those who do coming up, bubbling up. And in many respects, it's a numbers game at the end of the day. So we need to produce more innovation, have more cash to go in at certain inflection points. So seed, angel, VC, different points of funding on that particular journey in order to help these people make it happen.
And I actually remember, I think the presentation that you once gave, that I saw that you had moved from that CTO to the CEO. So what advice would you give to a budding cybersecurity innovator just now? Someone who's maybe struggling to get funding or trying to get some traction for their work?
So what we did was we found ourselves an advisory group of well-networked and financially wealthily sort of independent people who kind of opened up some doors for us. So we created a group of people around us who had credibility, who could go out to their network and talk about what we're doing, and they could help us bring money in as well. So I think part of it is that, which is create around you the group of people that will help you open these doors. And you know, there's loads of people out there who have taken from the industry coming up, so myself included. You know, I want to be able to help mentor startups should they want that, based on the fact that I got a lot of free mentoring and a lot of free advice. And coming up, that's incredibly valuable. So there are people out there who will want to help you. So creating that kind of group of people around you as well, and just persist and make sure that, so right now things are incredibly tough because of the COVID situation, because funding is drying up in a lot of respects from a lot of investors for new companies coming along. But maybe there's something you can do in order to keep your innovation as your side hustle and do something else to keep yourself going, put it into hibernation. Or maybe there's something you can do to pivot on the innovation in order to help with the current situation. There are always problems out there that needs innovators, entrepreneurs to go out and help fix.
If I was to give you £10 million just now to build the next $1 billion company, how would you do that? And as a second question, do you think it is possible to build that tech unicorn again in Scotland?
Yeah, absolutely. It's happened twice now. I think we can absolutely do it again. As for the 10 million, I'll give you my bank details if you want, Bill. And I'll give you a report in a couple of years on how that goes. No, I'd take the 10 million and I'd spread it across a number. So spread bet. You can do, I mean, even let's say it was 10 companies at $1 million, you can do so much with £1 million. I wish we had £1 million. Actually, no, I'm glad we didn't have $1 million to start with, because we needed that focus, and having a small amount of cash helped us achieve that focus. To be honest, it was later stages that I think that larger amount of cash would have really helped us accelerate things. But even, a couple 100K across 20, 30 companies, see how they do, get them to a certain phase, and then bring in other investors in order to help them get to that next phase. So invest in a number of other, a range of different innovative startups, I think, will be key to getting that working.
Yeah, so I suppose it's probably better at the early stages not to have enough money. It keeps you hungry rather than having too much. And I think a lot of the big tech unicorns with a lot of investment struggle sometimes because they will sit back much more. So is there any book or film or something that has inspired you in your life and your career?
Yeah, for me, it's music and books. I read a lot of sci-fi. I still do. I still read too much sci-fi growing up. So things like Arthur C. Clarke, and Asimov, and all that kind of good classic stuff. And the music, I guess, joins hand in hand with that. So I'm a big fan of Jimi Hendrix, and he was into his sci-fi as well. And a lot of his songs and music was inspired by the books he read. Some of his guitar playing as well, which I think is incredible. And that kind of music, whether it be Hendrix or Zappa or anything that has got that kind of feel to it, which I think really frees the mind up, really frees your mind to think about things in different ways. And it's the same with reading sci-fi as well. Introduced me to new ideas and concepts. It still does. There's still incredible stuff out there. Some of the modern authors are phenomenal. I've had to stop reading space operas though, because they're books this thick and I can't get through them in time. So yeah, it's sci-fi. It's that kind of music. Really inspires me.
And I think with Zone Fox, you could see that someone somewhere had an eye for detail in the product itself, the way it was created and the whole marketing and so on. So that was obviously Steve Jobs' approach to his business. It had to look beautiful and it had to be usable. But the Bill Gates approach is obviously different, taking a very much more technical approach and not getting it right for version 1, but version 3 will be okay. So of those two leaders, Bill Gates and Steve Jobs, where do you see yourself lying?
That's a tough question. It's kind of a rock and a hard place question because I'm not a fan of Steve Jobs. As a person, he was a difficult character to say the least, but he obviously inspired devotion and he inspired great creativity in the companies that he was involved with, which is not just Apple, but his other creations. Bill Gates was a divisive figure because of the monopoly piece, but you could look at what he's doing right now with his philanthropy and really start to see the full scope of what he's trying to do. I'd probably be more of a Bill Gates, but that's standing at this point in history. I think had you asked me that question 10 years ago, it might have been entirely different. It's always hard to tell.
Yeah. Microsoft changed as a company so much over these last 10 years. They're not the DOS 3.0 company that they used to be.
Bill.
No, that's right. Yeah. I mean, I think the good thing, they've always been pretty good at software engineering and so on. They've kind of stuck to that, where other companies obviously look at other things. And that's a good thing about Zone Fox. You were very focused on what it was you were doing, which is very much machine learning, AI, data analytics. So I think you gave a hint a bit earlier on about this, but if you weren't this cybersecurity leader, what would you actually be in your career or in your life?
I
Apart from a Jimi Hendrix.
I'd be a Jimi Hendrix tribute band, play Wild Thing over and over again really badly. What would I be? I honestly don't know. I've always taken opportunities. I've been lucky enough to have really good opportunities, and then I've been, I guess, reckless or wise enough to take them. I mean, doing the PhD was a big thing. I didn't know what that would lead to. Doing the Smart project was a big thing. I didn't know what that would lead to. Spinning a company net, all these things that I never really had a plan, so I honestly couldn't say. I'd hopefully be doing that same kind of thing, which is following the next kind of opportunity and hoping, or at least not hoping, but trying my best to make it work out. So who knows where that would lead me if it wasn't for that start.
Yeah, and it took a while to really find where you wanted to go, because I remember you started in multimedia,
Yeah.
and obviously your father was a key influence there in that, and you went on to networking, and then you found your space. So it's been an interesting route for you. So what's the next great thing for Jamie Graves?
It's a good question. Lots of really interesting things happening now where I am. But 5-10 years down the line, who knows?
You're not giving much away there.
No.
And if there's one common denominator in all your presentations that someone can take away, it's obviously learning a whole lot about cybersecurity, but it's your love of cats. So maybe you could fill us in a little bit. Aha, there we go. Maybe you can fill us in about why.
It's a couple of things. One is a nod to a coursework I built for the forensics module. I hid a bunch of lolcat pictures on a bunch of virtual disks to test out various forensic mining tools. And I still get approached by students who are still doing it, and they say, "Oh, I had to do this course where we had to find all these lolcats." And I say, I'm the guy who did that. They're usually either really pleased or really upset with me, depending on how they found the coursework. But also, PowerPoints are really boring. They're really, really dull to sit through if they've got loads of writing on. So I quite like to tell a story, and the cat pictures are just a reminder of me what to talk about next, so don't go off on one. That's basically why.
Thanks, Jamie. It's been a privilege to watch your career develop, and I think you're a role model for any budding innovator. So I'll hand it back to Ritz now. Thank you.
Thanks, Bill.
That's great. Yeah, I've taken inspiration. So yeah, there are some network forensics, lolcat searching, some other ones I won't mention.
Have you got some PCAPs with lolcats in them?
Yep.
Good man.
Yep, there's a bit of netminer and different things to find some lolcats. Yep. So just a little tribute act to your original stuff.
Well, I was sitting there one night thinking, this is for discovering all kinds of appalling imagery, and let's try and at least make it a wee bit lighthearted, because it is a brutally tough subject.
No, you get some great laughs in the class, when the students don't know they're looking for lolcats and then these things turn up. You do get some nice reactions, yeah. So it's good fun, which is one of the key things. So I've just got one final question. Do you like whiskey, Jamie?
No, I don't, Rich. I hate the stuff.
I'm not so sure that's correct.
Yeah, I do. I like whiskey. I like Scotch and I like bourbon. What can I say?
So can I ask, what's your favourite? So either now or generally.
Probably. So I like my Islay whiskies. So probably my favourite there is either Kalila or Lafroig, because they're both smoky but incredibly different. But I like my Space Eyes as well. The smoky ones definitely edge it for me. What about yourself? What are your favourite ones?
Well, I don't know. I used to be heavily into the smoky stuff, but I've kind of swung away back to sort of sherry cask finished, almost sweet ones since joining the Malt Whisky Society here in Edinburgh.
What about you, Bill? Do you like your whiskey, or are you more of a vodka man?
No, I've not had a tipple for a few years now. I don't drink whiskey, I'm afraid.
Good. That's a sensible thing to do.
It's a challenge. It's a challenge. I'm working on them. Yes, something. Don Smith, he likes stuff like the Lagavulin Distillers Edition, which kind of mixes the two. So that's
right,
kind of smoky with a sherry cask finish.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm quite partial to that at the moment. That's a nice one. But any cat themed ones would be interesting.
Agreed. So, I'll keep my eyes out.
Themed. How does that work? I don't think that sounds good.
No, we found one recently. It was it had the Scottish Malt Whisky Society bottle their own bottles, and they give them names. So there was a cat themed one recently, which yeah, I think Jamie might end up partaking in.
Well, each of the distilleries have their own cats, and the one at Talisker, I've seen that cat a bunch of times roaming around, and it's really friendly as well. Stop and get petted loads. So yeah, maybe that's your angle there. Mouse catcher, Rich Macfarlane special bottling.
I'll send that idea in a postcard to them.
I'll go straight into the shredder out of the print.
Straight into the slash bin. Yeah. Bill, have you got any final questions?
No. As I said, I mean, I think you're the perfect role model, really, in Scotland, and we need more Jimmy Graves in the future.
I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for Napier and Bill and that whole ecosystem. So it takes a family, it takes a tribe. So you know, and we've got a really good one. So it's kudos to everyone.
Great. Thank you. Okay, well, with that, thanks very much, Jamie, for that really quite inspirational talk. So thanks very much, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you very much. Cheers, Bill.
Thank you.
Cheers, Jamie.